something unexpected is quietly gaining traction behind the scenes. And if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan, this is the kind of development that could reshape the entire direction of the franchise heading into the 2026 season. What once felt like a closed chapter has suddenly reopened, and the implications are far bigger than they might seem at first glance. But before we continue, tell me, in your opinion, which position do the Vikings need to pay more attention to? Where urgent reinforcement is needed? Write in the comments, and be sure to click the like button. According to insights shared by SCHEFTER, there has been renewed communication involving a potential trade scenario centered around linebacker Jonathan Greenard and the Philadelphia Eagles. This wasn't even the main focus of the report. It emerged as a secondary detail in a broader discussion, but sometimes those are the details that matter most. League sources indicate that Philadelphia has checked in on Greenard multiple times throughout the offseason, signaling sustained interest rather than a one-off inquiry. Now, let's pause on that for a second, because if you've been following this situation closely, you know this isn't entirely new, but it felt like it had cooled off. The Vikings had previously set a firm stance. They wanted premium value. We're talking a high day 2 pick at minimum, potentially even flirting with first-round compensation. And when that market didn't immediately materialize, the assumption was simple. Minnesota would hold on to one of its most productive defensive pieces. But here's where things get interesting. Greenard's production tells a layered story. In 2024, he delivered an elite-level impact with 12 sacks. That's the kind of output that puts you firmly in the upper tier of edge defenders. Fast forward to last season, and the raw numbers dipped, just 3 sacks across 12 games. On the surface, that might raise concerns, but dig deeper, and you'll find a 23.3% pass rush win rate, which suggests his effectiveness didn't disappear. It hints at context, usage, scheme, or even supporting cast, playing a role in that statistical drop-off. And this is exactly why teams like Philadelphia remain interested. The Eagles, holding multiple day 2 picks, 58, 68, and 98, are in a position to make something happen. However, from Minnesota's perspective, not all picks are created equal. There's a clear line in the sand here. A deal centered around pick 68 or 98 likely doesn't even get a serious conversation going. But if pick 54 enters the discussion, now you're talking about something that could shift the draft strategy entirely. Imagine this scenario. The Vikings walk into the draft holding picks 18, 49, and now 54, along with 2 additional third-round selections at 82 and 97. That's 5 picks in the top 100, 3 inside the top 54. That's not just flexibility, that's control. That's the kind of capital that allows you to reshape multiple position groups in one weekend. But here's the dilemma, and it's a big one. Do you sacrifice proven production for potential? Because, make no mistake, Greenard isn't just another rotational piece. He fits the mold of a true edge presence, the kind you rely on when you're trying to make a deep postseason push. And if the goal for Minnesota is to compete at a high level, maybe even push toward the NFC Championship, you don't just casually move on from that type of player. Yes, the roster includes names like Dallas Turner and Andrew Van Ginkel. But there's nuance here. Van Ginkel, while versatile, operates more as a hybrid joker within the defense rather than a traditional hand-in-the-dirt edge rusher. Turner, meanwhile, is still developing, still finding his footing at the NFL level. That leaves Greenard as the most reliable, proven option in that specific role. And then there's the contract. This might be one of the most underrated elements of the entire situation. Greenard is currently on a deal that pays him just over $22 million for 2026, with a similar figure in 2027. In today's market, for a player with his production ceiling, that's incredibly team-friendly. Even with his desire for a future extension, the Vikings are under no immediate pressure to act. So now the question becomes even more complex. Are you really willing to give up that level of value, on the field and financially, unless the return is undeniably strong? Because internally, the mindset appears clear. Unless a first-round pick is on the table, this is a move that carries significant risk. A late first-round selection? That might force a decision. But anything less starts to feel like a gamble, especially for a team with playoff aspirations. And yet, the fact that these conversations are resurfacing right now, right before the draft, is what makes this situation impossible to ignore. Because timing in the NFL is never accidental. So let me throw this directly to you. If you're in that front office seat, and pick 54 is the best offer on the table, are you pulling the trigger, or are you holding the line and keeping Greenard for one more run? Drop your take in the comments. Accept or decline. And here's where the conversation shifts from speculation to strategy. Because if the Minnesota Vikings were to actually move on from Jonathan Greenard during draft weekend, this wouldn't just be about replacing a player. It would be about redefining the identity of this defense moving forward. Think about what that signals. It suggests a pivot toward youth, toward cost control, and toward building a new core through the 2026 NFL Draft. And based on everything we're hearing, there are already very specific names being internally valued as potential cornerstones of that transition. One of the most intriguing prospects tied to Minnesota's radar is Trayden Stokes, a dynamic defensive back out of Arizona. This is not just another secondary piece, this is a hybrid weapon, a safety who moves like a corner, processes like a veteran, and brings a level of instinct that you simply cannot teach. There's a reason why projections have him firmly in that second-round range, right around pick 49, because the value meets the need almost perfectly. Stokes isn't just about tape. He backed it up with elite athletic testing. A 4.33 in the 40-yard dash, explosive vertical numbers, and a 10-yard split that puts him among the most reactive defenders in this class. But what really stands out is how he reads the game. Route recognition, ball tracking, spatial awareness, it's all there. If Minnesota lands him, you're not just adding depth, you're adding versatility to a secondary that's becoming increasingly positionless. And here's the bigger picture. If the Vikings don't land a top-tier defensive back at pick 18, someone like Stokes becomes even more valuable. He gives you flexibility. He allows you to go in a different direction early, while still reinforcing the back end with high-level talent. Now let's flip to the offensive side, because this is where things get even more interesting. There's a name that might not be getting national attention yet, but it absolutely should be on your radar if you're following this team closely. Emmett Johnson out of Nebraska. And here's the twist. He's a Minnesota native. That matters. There's always an extra layer of motivation, of connection, when a player gets the opportunity to represent home. But this isn't just a feel-good story. Johnson brings a skill set that this current running back room doesn't fully possess. With Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones leading the depth chart, you've got physicality, you've got downhill running, but what you're missing is that true third-down threat. A back who can consistently impact the passing game. That's where Johnson fits in. He's a natural pass catcher, smooth hands, good route awareness, and the ability to create mismatches against linebackers. Yes, there are areas to develop, blitz pickup being one of them, but those are coachable elements, especially when you're learning behind a veteran like Aaron Jones, who has built a career on versatility and football IQ. Now imagine adding that dimension in round 3. Suddenly, your offense becomes more unpredictable, more balanced, more difficult to defend on third down. And the value doesn't stop there. As we move into day 3 territory, One name that continues to stand out is Pat Kuntz, an interior offensive lineman who quietly put together one of the most efficient seasons in college football. Over 1,000 snaps, just 2 penalties, 0 sacks allowed. That level of consistency is rare, especially at the center position. And let's be real, the Vikings' offensive line has invested heavily in recent years. Big contracts, high draft picks, but the center position still feels like the final piece of the puzzle. If you can land someone like Kuntz in the 5th round, a true natural center with proven production, you're potentially solving that issue without spending premium capital. That's how smart teams build depth. That's how they sustain success. But we're not done yet, because defensively, there's another name generating serious buzz. D'Angelo Pons, out of Indiana. Now, this is where perception and reality start to clash. A lot of people see Pons' size and immediately label him as a slot-only defender. But turn on the tape, and you'll see something completely different. This is a player who can line up outside, who competes against top-tier receivers, and who plays with a level of physicality that completely defies his measurements. He's not just surviving against elite competition, he's producing. And in today's NFL, where offenses are constantly evolving, defenses need adaptability. Bigger slot receivers, more run-heavy nickel packages. The traditional roles are changing. Pons fits that evolution perfectly. He's not limited, he's versatile. Add him to a room that already includes Byron Murphy Jr., and suddenly you're building a secondary that can match up with just about anything. And then, there's the high-risk, high-reward conversation. Cale Banks. This is the type of prospect that can completely change the trajectory of a defense, or leave you wondering what could have been. Physically, he's everything you want. Size, length, explosiveness. The flashes are undeniable. At his best, he looks like a dominant interior force capable of collapsing pockets and anchoring against the run. But the concerns are real. Injuries, consistency, development curve. Still, if you're sitting there in round 2 and you're looking for upside, true, game-changing upside, this is the kind of swing that can pay off in a massive way, especially if you're pairing him with emerging pieces along that defensive front. So now, step back and look at the full picture. Potential trade involving Jonathan Greenard, a stockpile of draft picks, strategic targets across multiple positions. This isn't random, it's calculated. It's a front office exploring every possible path to build a roster that can compete now, while also setting up the future. And that's what makes this upcoming draft weekend so critical. Because one decision, just one, could shift everything. So now, I want to hear from you, because this is where it gets real. If you had to choose your guy in this draft class to change the future of the Minnesota Vikings, who are you betting on? And why? And if you're enjoying this kind of deep dive, make sure you drop a like and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Go Vikings!